Now we begin our lesson on how to get a raise. First, let me tell you about one of many career strategies that you might choose. Now, everybody's different, every situation is unique, but here's just an example of a good career path that would be both rewarding in terms of having meaning and statistically likely to work out for you. When you're young, you work for a boss and you work for a salary. But you don't really work for money. You work to pay the bills and to survive while you're building your talent stack. So the idea of your first job, if you do it right, the idea is to figure out how to get a job that teaches you the most valuable sets of skills. If you can only get one skill out of the job you're in, consider changing jobs, or consider learning things on your own. But you should always, if you're working for a salary, you should always also be adding to your skill set. Once you have your skills, that gives you lots of options to work for yourself. Working for yourself is a much better life. And then if you do that right and everything works out, then you can start working for the benefit of others. So this would be an example of a rewarding life that you would feel meaning at every step. This first step feels like it's devoid of meaning. You're just working for a salary. You're an hourly worker with a boss. Maybe you have a cubicle, maybe you don't, but you're sort of a drone. The way to give meaning to that is to make sure that you're learning at the same time. It's almost impossible to be learning useful things and also not have a feeling of meaning in your life. It's almost automatic, because you can feel yourself on this path, and that will always feel right. All right, now let's say you've got yourself a job and you want to get a raise. I put together some of my best and or least obvious suggestions. Now, there's probably a set of obvious stuff that you should do that I'll just leave out because they're obvious, but I thought I'd break it down this way. Your negotiation for a raise does not start the moment you're talking to your boss and saying, "Can I have a raise?" If you wait until then, you've waited too long, you've done it all wrong. All right, you've got to start laying the groundwork all the time. So your job is either to get a better job or to get a raise and or promotion. So you should think of your job as getting a better job, either within the company or somewhere else. That's a good mindset, because then you're just always looking for the next opportunity, be it within the company or without. So here are some of the things you should do in your job to set the stage. Exaggerate your value. Do you think I'm kidding? Not even a little bit. If you don't exaggerate your value, you will be at a disadvantage to your coworkers who will. Because it's pretty common for people to exaggerate their value. And of course, the way you do that is to talk about how you've worked all night, you've worked all weekend, you solved the problem that nobody could solve. There's the 3 task forces you're on. You're working so hard, and you're doing things that nobody could have done before and saving thousands of dollars, if not millions. And you just sort of keep drip, drip, drip. You tell your coworkers and you tell your boss in every way you can, in every opportunity you have, but make it look natural. Just make it look like conversation. It's the most common way that employees see the environment with some notion of their value. Because the truth is, most people can't watch you work. Most jobs are done in semi-isolation. The boss isn't watching you work most of the time. So the only thing they know about you, unless you make big mistakes, then they know that. Usually the only thing they know about you is big accomplishments, which are rare, and what they directly see, and then what you tell them. So you want to start working on them, telling them you're valuable, that you're doing things, you're accomplishing things. Of course, I'm going to skip down to backstabbing your coworkers. Now, I say that in the funny way. But the more persuasion language way to say that is you want to set up a contrast. If you're going to make the case that you're the valuable person in your part of the company, it's also sometimes helpful to make the case that the other people are a little bit less valuable. Now, you might say to yourself, Scott, is that ethical? I would say no. I'd say no. But I'm giving you a lesson on persuasion. And, there may be situations where you are, in fact, better than the other people in your department. If that's true, and it would help you to tell your boss, Wally, not so good. Dilbert, not having a good year. Me, I'm killing it. It wouldn't kill you to let it be known that you're doing better than the other employees. Now, be careful with this, make your own moral and ethical judgments, but if it's true, it's also valid. If it's not true, well then you're just a liar and you have to live with that, but it might still work. Build your talent stack. There is nothing more impressive to a boss than somebody who is adding talents that are relevant to the job in an ongoing fashion. If you ever have an employee who is very dedicated about, okay, I know this much, in this next month I'm going to add this thing, and I'm going to take this class, and I'm learning these things. I'm volunteering to work in another group to cross-train. If you get an employee like that, that's every boss's, desire. They want that employee. So if you can establish that you're one of those people who is building your talent stack, well, you're priming your boss for the thought that you're worth more. You want to look sharp because we are we're visual creatures. So I would love to tell you that the way you look doesn't affect anything. Doesn't affect your job performance. The way you look, well, probably doesn't affect your job performance, but it might affect your raise because your boss is a visual person, because we're all visual people. So if you're looking for the most important elements of persuasion, visual is always in the top three. Only fear and maybe one other would be up there. You got to get the visual right. So you got to look like you're the serious employee that you want to be. They say dress for the job, your boss's job or the job above you, or the job that you want. And I would say that's approximately true, but in general, you want to just dress better than other people if you can. That includes your fitness, your hairstyle, just your basic fashion choices, your look. If you think that stuff doesn't matter, you're living in a dream world. Now, you don't have to be a beautiful person. I'm not saying that. You don't have to be young. You don't have to be anything in particular. You just want to be the better version of whatever you are. All right. You want to be irreplaceable. I put irreplaceable in quotes because nobody's irreplaceable. But you can often convince people that you are. It's the weirdest thing. We all know that nobody's irreplaceable. But how many times have you worked someplace where somebody was described as irreplaceable? What that really means is that it would be a huge pain to figure out how to, do things if this person left, but you'd do it. I mean, it always works. Rarely does a company just disappear because a key employee left. So if you can create the impression that you're irreplaceable, that can go a long way toward getting that raise. Again, these are all the things that you're doing way ahead of time. So, this is months and months before you even ask for a raise. You make sure you're setting the table this way. So, in terms of being irreplaceable, if you can find something to volunteer for, if you don't already have something that you're irreplaceable at, volunteer for something that makes you irreplaceable. Find some function that's you're the only one who knows how to do it. I forgot one other tip, which is to have a wing person. A wing person is somebody else that you've sort of deputized to say good things to your boss or even to your coworkers to build your reputation. I've actually seen this work really, really well. So if you don't have a wing person, somebody who is just talking good things about you behind your back, see if you can get one. Because if you have somebody else saying good things behind your back, that carries way more weight than your own bragging. It just feels like it's more true because it came from some other person. So get yourself a wing person. Maybe you can work with each other, be each other's wing person. Very powerful persuasion to have other people talking for you. Then, I did some Googling to confirm what I suspected was true. I'm not sure there's science behind this. There's enough science to suggest that this is true, and that is that morning meetings to ask for a raise are going to be more effective than afternoon. The thinking behind that is that people can make decisions in the morning, and they're not so good at making decisions in the afternoon, and what you don't want is for them to say, I'll get back to you. If you can nail them down to a decision, that's best, or at least get them to commit to looking into it, because often the boss has to, check the budget and stuff. But you can get maybe at least a mental decision before they verbally tell you they've decided, that you can mentally commit them. So pick the morning. In terms of the days of the week, I would say Tuesday or Wednesday. When I Googled it, I saw some experts saying earlier in the week is better, but I would stay away from Monday. Monday is a day when everybody's distracted and a little bit overworked and stressed. Tuesday, Wednesday, people have sort of hit their peak, and they're not yet thinking about the weekend. So Tuesday, Wednesday, in the morning, and schedule it. It's very important that you schedule it, and experts also tell you to schedule it as the only topic. Don't throw in at the end of a meeting, I'd like a raise, that'd be good. Don't do that. You schedule the meeting, so you make sure that it's on the day of the week you want and the time that you want, and it's the only topic, and you tell your boss that's what the topic is, because they get to think about it for a while. If you make them think about it for a week, you're going to get a better result than if it's the first time they've ever thought of it. There's something about just thinking about an idea that gets you used to it. There's nothing but time and exposure to an idea that makes you more comfortable with it. It works every time, all the time. You can get somebody used to anything eventually. All right, and then you might want to persuade. This is a term borrowed from the book Persuasion by Robert Cialdini, the follow-up book to Influence, his best-selling book on how to influence. Now, I would read both of those books if you're serious about getting a raise. You should read my book, Win Bigly. You should read Influence by Cialdini, and also Persuasion. Now, Persuasion teaches that there are some exposures to ideas, thoughts, sounds, etc., that will predispose somebody to make a certain kind of decision. And what is interesting about it is that the persuasion can be in a completely different domain than the thing you're trying to persuade. So here's what is not persuasion. Hey, Bob, I hear a lot of people getting raises. A lot of other people getting raises. Here, that would be too obvious, because that's the same topic that you're trying to persuade on, which is getting a raise. Instead, persuasion might want to simply put the target of your persuasion, your boss, in the mood to be generous, or in the mood to be a hero, whichever you think is the more operative thing for your boss. So you might tell a story about somebody who is just generous, and it has nothing to do with your meeting, your raise. It's just the last thing that you talk to your boss about before the next time he sees you, and now you're asking him for a raise. And maybe it triggers in your boss's mind that story that just recently you told him about a great act of generosity, which was just an interesting story you saw in the news. Now that would be a case of persuasion. Would that exact thing work? Don't know. The only way you can know when persuasion is working is sort of testing it. All right? And if you're just trying to persuade in the wild, the best you can do is take some, I would say, informed guesses about what would make sense. Because you're trying to get your boss in a mood, just a mood. So if the mood you want your boss to be in is generosity, a story of unrelated generosity will get the job done. Now, each of these techniques, by the way, is only going to move the needle, say 2%, just for discussion purposes. But there are a lot of them. If you get everything right, that's a lot of 2%, and suddenly your odds of getting a raise are looking pretty good. All right, here are the things that you need to know. So in order to persuade effectively, it's very important that you have a good understanding of what the other person is thinking and feeling. And you should also have a better sense of who you are and what you're worth. If you get those things right, you will persuade better. The first thing you need to know is that it's always okay to ask for a raise. Bosses expect people to ask for raises. It's pretty routine. If your boss fired you or penalized you for asking for a raise, it's good to know that as soon as possible, and then get the hell out of that company. Any boss who penalizes you for stating what you think you're worth and bringing it up, if you get penalized for that, okay, you need a new company, you need a new boss, and you need it right away. Get out of there just as fast as you can. For any normal situation, and certainly especially for a large company where there are a lot of professional managers, things get dicier as you get down to the level of, let's say, a family business. There's more emotion involved there. But if you're dealing with a sizable professional company, you can ask for a raise. That's just part of the rules. You can ask for anything you want. So know that it's okay to ask, and in fact, any professional manager is going to respect you for knowing what you're worth. They will actually have more respect for you, even if they don't give you the raise. Because, maybe there's a budget constraint, who knows. But they will respect you more for asking than for not asking. Once you know that, it makes it easier to ask, because there's no downside. You either gain some respect, or you gain some respect and a raise. Or you gain some respect and not a raise now, but you're sort of the next one in line when the situation is better. There's literally no downside. Because like I said, if this ever did cause a downside, if you're working for a company that bad, or a boss that bad, get out of there. The sooner you do that, the better. Next thing to know is that everyone is bluffing. Meaning that in the business world especially, not just in terms of negotiating, because there's some bluffing there too, but in terms of acting confident, acting like they know what they're doing, acting like they're worth a raise, acting like they're capable of doing their job. Everybody's sort of acting all the time. The moment you learn that you're not the one who's acting, you're not the only one, then you're free. You're free to continue acting, because the act is actually, a necessary part of the social and business dance. So once you can recognize it as sort of a ceremonial, agreed upon way that people act, it's not anybody being, phony perhaps. You could say that it's phony, because it is, but it's also an acceptable, understood level of phoniness that becomes almost a language of business. So don't be shy about speaking the language of business, which is acting a little, maybe a little bit more than you are, a little more professional than you feel, that sort of thing. So just be comfortable with the fact that everybody's acting, and then you can do it too, and you'll feel more comfortable when you're doing it. Make sure you have options. That's what the talent stack does. It doesn't hurt if you've looked around a little bit. Maybe your boss knows you took a long lunch last week. Maybe you left a resume on the printer. No, don't do that. All right, so here's some basic persuasion steps. You want to use pacing. Pacing is the idea that you match your boss in some way. You agree with your boss, whatever he's saying to begin with. Maybe you dress as professional as your boss. You sit like your boss, your posture is like your boss, maybe you dress like your boss, you laugh like your boss, maybe you use the same kind of language and approach, the same vibe as your boss. In other words, find as many things as you can that you can effortlessly and naturally imitate. That's what pacing is. Because once you're imitating somebody, then you have at least the possibility of leading them, because they become comfortable with you, you become synchronized, and then you can take them to where you want them to go. Be irrational. It's one of the best tips of negotiating. If you are known to be rational on the subject of the negotiation, what will the other person do? The other person will never give up telling you all the rational reasons why you should take less, settle for less, put up with what you already have, be happy with what you have, etc. As soon as you are identified as a rational person, then you've also identified as the person who's going to lose the negotiation. By contrast, compared to this, I need to take care of my family. I've got a special needs child. I've got my costs have all gone up, and I've looked around and I know that I can make a lot more money at another company. But honestly, I looked around and I saw that other people are making more than me, and I see what they contribute, and it just makes me crazy. And I don't think I could work at a company like this. Now, what I just said is purely emotional. It's just emotional. But how does your boss make that go away? The only way your boss can make that go away is by giving you the raise. So that's why it works. As long as you're acting rational, your boss will keep giving you reasons why you should be happy the way you are. The moment you show that reasons don't work, because you've got an emotional investment, it's either you're taking care of somebody, you can't be happy with how you're treated, that sort of thing, then there's just nothing you can do as a boss but give the raise. It's your one chance. Now your boss, the other thing you should know is your boss is always going to prefer keeping a good employee over replacing the employee just to save 5% or 10% or whatever you're asking for. So they're always going to be biased toward giving you the raise. Because the alternative, if they believe you're going to leave, you have to have a credible threat of leaving. But if they believe that's the risk, they really don't want that. That's very expensive. They would rather pay a little extra to keep you. So make sure your boss knows you have options. It's also good to be specific and confident. If you are confident in what you're asking and specific, you're giving your boss something to say yes or no to. You want to boil the decision down to the simplest yes-no. So you come in and you say, boss, I've been earning $85,000 a year. I've been looking around. I've added these 3 skills. I've taken on this job. I think, I could make 120 across the street for the competitor, but that's the last thing I want to do because I don't want to leave. I like this place. But I really need to know that this is the best place for me, and if you could give me 120,000, I would not look. I would just say, you got me. That's a fair deal. So that's my request. Can you give me 120,000 a year? And say that confidently. Now the confident part has 2 variables to it. One is if you say that you're worth this confidently, then it sounds believable because you said it confidently. If you said it with some, let's say hesitation, it's like, I could be worth, I don't know, as much as 120,000. If you say it that way, then what's your boss going to think? Well, if you're not sure, why should I be sure? So, confidence not only shows that you're a more capable employee, because anybody who looks confident and can ask for a raise is going to be a competent employee. That's a good sign. You could probably do a lot of other things, because there aren't that many people who can confidently walk in and make a case for a raise and sell it. If you walk in, make the case, and sell it, you're going to be a superstar. Your boss is going to say, you made the sale. There's nothing more impressive to a boss than convincing the boss of something, even if it's just something for you, a raise. All right, here's another thing you could do. Use a proxy. In other words, send another person to ask for your raise for you. Hold on, you're saying, in what world can you send somebody else to ask for a raise for you? A couple that I can think of. Number one, is you've got your wing person that I mentioned, and the wing person can go to the boss and say, I think you're going to lose Alice unless you give her a raise. I don't think she's happy. She's doing the work of 3 people. I think you really should just give her a raise. So that might not close the deal, but you can certainly, if you have a strong enough wing person who might be, let's say, friends with the boss, that would help, send somebody else. That probably wouldn't work, but here's something that might. Suppose, let's say you're a woman and you found out that you earn less than the men in your department who are doing the same job. A fairly common situation, right? Now, forgetting for the moment, let's forget about why. It doesn't matter if it's because you have less experience. Doesn't matter if it's because of sexism. What matters is, it's going to look like sexism. So here's one of the things you could do. This won't work very often. All right? I'm just giving you a full canvas of the options. You could actually convince a male coworker to go get you a raise for you, so that he doesn't have to deal with the fact that you're underpaid and it doesn't make sense. You could probably talk your coworker into getting you a raise, if there's a reason. And the reason is there's an injustice here, or it looks like one, which is good enough. And people like to fix injustices. Almost every company has somebody who wants to fix an injustice. If you happen to know somebody like that, maybe you can send them. So those are all your options. Obviously, the best choice is to do this all yourself. The strongest play is to walk in, be confident, know exactly what you want, pick the right time of day, set the table, have a lot of options, have a lot of talent, pace your boss, be a little bit irrational, pull it all together, and take a shot at it. What happens if it doesn't work? If it doesn't work, you still win, but a little bit less. If you ask your boss for a raise and it just goes south, and let's say it's a boss who's not going to fire you or anything, they just didn't give you the raise, you still have the experience of you walked into your boss's office and you asked for a raise. Think how few people can do that. If you've done it once, even if it didn't work, you're the most experienced person you know at doing that. Well, my cat's calling me, so I think that means we're done. So this is your micro lesson on how to get a raise. Some of these techniques might generalize. Be ethical, be moral. Just because you have these powers, don't abuse them.